It's time for final steps. Are you ready? Hey everyone, so I am going to show you how to do the backing and the binding in just a minute, but I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to tell you about our quilt label. So you can make a quilt label however you want to do it. Please do make a quilt label. I know you're probably done with the project. It's taken a while, but do this last step. Make sure and do a quilt label. This is our lasting legacy, right? It's going to tell everyone for generations who made this quilt. So this is the one that I made, and I am going to send this to each of the people that has done a donation. Everyone that supported our channel with a donation to Cristin Creates during the entire length of this project, I'm going to send this to you. I have your email address, I have the format of your machine, and I know you're working on the Whisk quilt. So there's only a couple of people, I think there's 2 more that still have not sent me their email address, but everyone else, check your emails. You should get it in the next couple days for sure, very soon. I just finished it today, so I'm pretty excited about it. Isn't it cute? This was a roadblock for me. I don't know how to digitize. I had a really hard time, but I made it on my machine, and I'm going to share it with you. So it will be personalized. For those that made a donation to the channel, I'm going to put your name and the year on this quilt label for you, and I'm going to give you information on how to do it. It's really cute. I love it. Pretty fun. It's a big one. This one is 6x6. If your biggest hoop is a 5x7, let me know and I'll shrink it down for you. But anyway, everyone is going to get this. Everyone that made a donation, I've got a whole spreadsheet of everybody that donated during this project. So don't worry, you will receive it. It will be in your email soon. All right. So I'm going to attach it. I did it on felt, and I'll go through all of the process for you in photos at the end of this video. First, I got to show you the backing and the binding, which I just finished, and oh my gosh, it's so pretty. You're gonna love it. So I'm going to attach mine onto the back of my quilt, and I'm just going to hand stitch it onto the back, and I will show you photos of that as well. But anyway, I'm going to show you the regular stuff, the backing and the binding. I took lots of photos. You'll have a full tutorial on that, but I wanted to give you a heads up real quick because I know a lot of people supported our channel during this project, and I appreciate you so much. You made it possible for me to get the supplies that I need to be able to keep these tutorials running. And so everyone that donated during this project, I am going to send you this quilt label, so check your email. Sorry, I forgot to say, if you haven't made a donation and you still want to, go ahead. So you can do a PayPal donation up here. I'm pointing to a link. You just click on that, send a donation through PayPal, or if you prefer Venmo, you can also have a Venmo link. Here's a link to Venmo to be able to make a donation. And again, I appreciate your support so much. It makes it so much helpful to be able to get these tutorials out for you, these free tutorials. So anyway, I have appreciate it. And everyone that did it already, you'll get it in your email. For those that are doing it now, don't worry, there's time. I will definitely get you the quilt label so that you can get it sewn onto your quilt and finish up this fun project. Hey everyone, Cristin here, and we are continuing, maybe even pretty close to finishing our We Whisk You a Merry Christmas quilt. You guys rocked those pinwheels. Oh my gosh, I found them so difficult, and you guys just, all the pictures were amazing. They look so good. So we did our pinwheel blocks, and then we did our outer borders. Our outer borders are pretty simple. They just take some time, but they were very simple. And now we have our entire quilt top done. Very exciting. So, and I'm loving seeing the pictures. Make sure to post pictures in the Cristin Creates group to let me know how your quilt is coming along, when you're ready to move on, all of that. I love seeing it. All right, so once I get this folded up and put away, then it's time to move on. So today we are going to work on the backing and the binding. It's slightly possible that we'll do the next 2 steps after that in the same video, but I'm not sure. It'll depend on how far along I get. So the backing and the binding, lots to talk about there. So the biggest thing I get questioned a lot, I put this here to help me remember, to add batting or not to add batting to the backing. totally up to you. I absolutely don't. To me, getting it through the throat of the machine, doing the stitch in the ditch is enough. I don't want to add another layer, but a lot of people choose to do that. They say that it hangs nicer on the wall when you do that. So whatever you want, if you want to add another layer of batting when you're adding on the backing material, absolutely do that. Totally up to you. I don't. All right, so your quilt your way. Don't forget, you do it how you want to do it. So we have a few things to talk about. Let's start with just talking about our backing. So if you made packets, I made a packet even for the backing. It just has our backing. The backing fabric did not come with the fabric kit. So if you forgot to get a backing, you can do that now. I think it was 1.5 yards if I recall. Well, let's see. It is at the beginning of the book. I remember that. It's on page 5. The backing, we need 1.5 yards of fabric. 1.5 yards. So if you didn't get that, again, it did not come in the fabric kit. It's a separate purchase. So totally up to you what fabric you use. I don't remember. Oh, let's see. It'll say on page 5 what one was the original. So, oh, look at that. I have the original. So it is the gray with Christmas items on it. This one is the original. I bought it just recently because I realized I didn't have it. And so I found it at one of our previous sponsors. So whenever you need something for one of our projects, I know our current sponsor is out of supplies, but check with our previous sponsors. There's a link in the Cristin Creates group of all of our previous sponsors, and a lot of times they'll have some leftover and can help you out. So you do need 1.5 yards of fabric. It can be anything. It's going to hang against a wall. It doesn't matter. But this is the original, and I think I know of one of our sponsors that does still have the original, maybe. Not totally sure. But since we have a sponsor, I don't like to talk about the other sponsors, even though our current sponsor is out of supplies. But you could always message me if you need some information. I can possibly lead you in the right direction. And like I said, in our Facebook group, there is a list of all of our previous sponsors. And I recommend always starting with them. They're always super helpful for our Cristin Creates group. So 1.5 yards of fabric for our backing. And again, you can add batting if you choose. I do not. And then you can choose to use, I'll probably just use white, but you could use a light gray, that cool gray 3 that is in our thread kit. That would work well for your thread, but for the bobbin, I should mention. So you could use this in your bobbin. Maybe I will do that, actually. I'm not sure. White or a light gray. It doesn't matter. But in your bobbin, all right? So for your bobbin, you can choose, because that's what will show up on the back, right? So you could choose to use a colored bobbin for your bobbin thread that will show up on the back. For the front, you definitely want an invisible thread. All right, and this is the one that I like. I have a couple that I like. This is the Gutermann. This is actually my favorite one. I also like Sulky. This one's Sulky. I'm wrong. Sorry. Sulky. I like Sulky and Gutermann. Both of those I like a lot. So in my Amazon storefront, here's a link. Click on that, and in like the essential items or something like that, there's a few tabs, and I think it's in the essential items. You'll see the thread that I recommend, and it comes super quick from Amazon, and it's a great deal. It's invisible thread. You want that for sure. Look at that. You can't even see it when you're doing this stitch in the ditch, because then you don't have to worry about getting it exactly right. So when we do our stitch in the ditch, let me move my backing fabric. When we do a stitch in the ditch, and I'll show you in photos, but we're basically just going to go around each of the blocks. We will stitch all the way. Oh, it's funny. It's trying to do that on the camera's backwards. So you're going to stitch in the ditch. All right. So you're going to try and get as close to inside of that ditch as possible. And that's why you want an invisible thread, because it's not always going to go exactly right inside of there, and you just don't want it to show up. So on your top thread, you want an invisible thread. All right, and another thing that's really helpful when you're doing stitch in the ditch is a stitch in the ditch foot. Have you seen these? They're pretty cool. This one's for my brother machine, but I'm sure every machine has one. It has this little center guide thing, and it just goes into that ditch and kind of makes a little like Moses parting the sea, right? It makes it so that you can stitch right in that ditch, and this is going to go ahead of this stitching and just kind of open it up a little bit for you. So this is really helpful. I didn't invest in this for a really long time, and my followers were like, "Oh, you should get that," and I finally did, because it wasn't cheap. I think it was like $60 or something for this little foot, but it was a really good purchase. I use it all the time. So think of it that way. You know, we make a lot of quilt projects, and this makes it easier. So that's my recommendation. Stitch in the ditch foot if you can find one for your machine. That's one thing. So like I said, we are going to go around every single block, and we are going to start from the center and work our way out. And I will give photos and more information about that, but that's how you stitch in the ditch. It's really easy to do. The hardest part is just finagling all of that extra fabric. And I'll tell you, one thing that I have found that is super helpful, I pull my desk out away from the wall and everything around it, kind of clear the space, and it's so much easier. It guides through. My stomach is growling. Excuse my tummy if you can hear that. But give yourself space. You want space to be able to do the stitch in the ditch, because otherwise this quilt gets in the way and it's really hard. You want as much free space as possible. So if you have to take over the dining room for a couple of days, tell your hubby it's okay. It's that Cristin says it's okay. You need space for this. All right, so that's another thing. And then a really key thing. So pins. We are going to pin this. I'll add photos. We're going to pin that backing fabric onto our top, our quilt top, and you want really good pins. Invest in some really good pins. I've told this story a few times. I bought pretty pins. They were pink and red and blue, and I had to throw them away the very first time I used them. I was like, okay, well, they're not sharp, and you're going through a couple of layers, right, with the different appliques, and you try not to pin through the applique. You kind of pin around it, but you want them out of the space, out of the room when you're doing that stitch in the ditch. So you want sharp pins. And so these are what I have. I will add a link here to my Amazon storefront. They are in there under the essential items. And it's basically these bigger pins. They're Dritz pins. There's bigger ones and then the smaller ones. And I'm telling you, oh boy, they make such a difference. Don't make the mistake of buying cheapy pins. You want good pins. It really makes a difference. All right. So top thread color, clear, monofilament, something like that it's called. You want that invisible thread for the top. You can use whatever matches your back fabric or white, whatever, it's totally up to you. And pin it. We're going to pin each block. We're going to stitch in the ditch using our stitch in the ditch foot. If you have one, that is really helpful. So it's really just a sewing day today. We are going to work on adding our backing onto our quilt top. That's the biggest part of today. And then I'll talk about the next step in just a minute. right, after we have our backing on, and I haven't done mine yet, but I'm just going to film this part so that we can get it all running. After you do your backing, then you're going to trim the excess so that everything's cleared off, and then we're going to do our binding. So grab your binding packet if you made a binding packet. It is this black with white dots on it fabric. And I mentioned in the prep video, I believe, that in the book, it has you cutting these to 2 1/4 times width of fabric. And I did mine to 2 1/2 inches times width of fabric. So that's what we usually do on the Kimberbell quilts. And like I mentioned before, this one was done before the quilting, and which really doesn't make a difference for the binding. But usually they have us do 2 1/2, and really it's totally up to you. Oh, can you hear my tummy? I'm so hungry. I need to have some lunch. So 2 1/2 is what I did mine to. It gives me a little bit more wiggle room, but 2 1/4 works really well too. And when it's 2 1/4, then you don't have to worry about it taking up too much space. But 2 1/4 I find is a little bit harder to get pulled over enough to be able to tack it down. But again, totally up to you. 2 1/4 or 2 1/2 times width of fabric, and you want 5 strips. 5 strips, all right? And let's see, I have some longer, some shorter because I didn't have quite enough. So we'll see how it turns out. But 5 strips, either at 2 1/4 or 2 1/2 times width of fabric. Don't stabilize this. Hear me, hear me, hear me. Do not stabilize it. All right. Don't stabilize your binding fabric ever, ever, ever. On your backing fabric, by the way, if you choose to stabilize it, you can. Some people do. I definitely do not. But that's up to you. But on the binding, don't do it. Do not stabilize your binding fabric. I did it once by mistake. After telling everybody not to, I did. And oh, it's really hard to turn it and to get those mitered corners just right. Don't do it. Believe me, it's a pain. All right, so 5 strips, 2 1/4 or 2 1/2 times width of fabric, and don't stabilize it. That's for your binding. And for the binding, so I do it from the back. A lot of people like to do binding by hand. Go for it. More power to you. I do not. I tried it one time on this tiny little pillow and it came out so bad. And I was like, no, this is just not my thing. So I'll do how whatever works for you. I'll show you what works for me. If you don't have something set in stone that you like to do, either way, I make a little pocket for the ending fabric so I don't have to figure out exactly how long and all of that. I just do it that way. And I will add photos of all of that. So I start from the back of the quilt, and I'll share photos of this. I start from the back of the quilt and add the binding on by machine, and then I flip it over and I do that by machine as well. But on that part, I add a little decorative stitch. And so again, I will add all kinds of information. I will warn you right now. One time I was like, oh, that's so cool. Use decorative stitch. And I think I did a bicycle on one. It took forever. So just keep in mind that you may want something simple that doesn't take forever and ever going back on all of those stitches for the binding, but totally up to you, your quilt, your way. I'm going to do a very simple, I don't remember what it's called. It's just like a little wiggly line, and it makes it so that it's very forgiving. It's very forgiving. It doesn't have to be perfect. And so I like that one. I like that one a lot. I've gotten pretty good at my binding, but I like that one stitch. So that's what we're going to do today. We've got our backing, then we're going to do our binding. We might move on and do the other stuff too, depending on time and editing and all of that. We'll see. let's quickly talk about the embellishments. I may do a separate video for the embellishments and the label. I am working on a label for everyone that has donated during this project. That's going to be my little gift to you, and I'm working on it, and I got it done, but I have a little hitch in it. So I'm working on it, and that is in the plan. But let's talk about the embellishments. So for the embellishments, they are on page 17. And I have mine just in a packet with the actual like cardboard piece that tells you about them. So I'm going to go over each of these separately. I'm not going to do it right now, but just to have you know what is in here. Of course, we have those buttons. Aren't those so cute? And our sponsor did have those. She may still have some more. I'm not sure, but Your Best Friend's Quilt Shop was able to have all of the buttons for our project. So this will go over each one of where it goes and all of that. And then there's also these little marshmallows. I think they're going to go on the hot cocoa is my guess, probably. But again, I will go over each of these separately. And so I'm just telling you what we're going to go over. And then there's this rickrack too. So the rickrack was in the embellishment kit as well. And we'll go over each of these individually. I'll show you in photos where they go and what we do with them. But there's not very many embellishments, so we may be able to get everything on one tutorial. We'll see. How are you doing with your goal? I have to tell you that today I have a completely different goal, totally different goal today than anything I've ever done. My goal is as little movement as possible. I did this killer workout yesterday that it was less than a 6-mile bike ride on my Nordic track, but it had almost 1,900 feet of climbing, 1,887 feet of climbing. It was killer. It was very, very, very painful. And then after that, I did a strength training workout with a bunch of lunges, and it wasn't just, usually she does legs or arms, it was like full body, and it felt really good at the time, especially after doing this bike ride. I was already warmed up and I was like, oh, I'm doing good. And today, even just trying to sit down on the toilet, I'm like, ow, ow, ow. So seriously, my goal today is just like, don't move, don't do anything, don't stretch, don't, ow, everything just hurts a lot. So that's my goal for today. I want to hear how you're doing. I'm sharing very private information, telling you about me trying to get on the toilet. So tell me, how are you doing with your goal? I want to hear about it. And my shirt today, this is a brand new one. So I told you guys about this sweatshirt a long time ago, like probably at least a month ago or more, when it was really cold out. But it's actually a really thin sweatshirt, and it's quite cold and windy here today. And I just love what I did to it. So it's a fun sweatshirt. It's in my Amazon storefront. And the one that I bought, a pink and gray one, which I haven't embroidered on yet, and I bought this blue one specifically for this design. I think this is so fun. So I bought the water design on Etsy. I'll add a link underneath this video. And then the sometimes you gotta stir the water, I did in Embellishments. And how fun is that? I love that. It was not easy. It was definitely a stretch for me. And it's so fun. I really love it. And I added the verse. It says John 5:7, which I had to go find in the Bible because it's on The Chosen. If you watch the Chosen movies, it's on there. So Jesus says sometimes you got to stir the water, and it's a really great one. I really enjoyed that, and I wanted to see exactly where that went in the actual Bible, and so I found it. And just a really fun shirt. I really, really, really like this one. I love that it is blue and gray. Isn't that neat? I think that's so fun. So it's a great sweatshirt. There were very few of them available after I told everybody about it. And so hopefully we'll see a bunch of people embroidering on those sweaters. I know that a bunch of people bought it, and I don't know if they've restocked by now, but either way, I'll add a link to my Amazon storefront here, and you can find this sweater, and it's a really fun one, and it was really easy to embroider on. It's really thin, so it'll be nice for spring. I'm enjoying it. Today's my first time wearing it, but fun sweatshirt. And again, I'll add information underneath this video of where I got the water design, and you can always look on my Amazon storefront to find the sweaters that I'm recommending to embroider on.